Hey gang, it's Seth. I'm going to do a video about diversity and multiculturalism. The fact is that diversity is not a strength, diversity is just a word, and multiculturalism has failed. The truth is that diversity more and more is often basically underhanded words for less white people. It's not, I'm not racist, I'm not at all racist, but it's true, and we'll talk about that more and unwrap it. But I'd argue that it started with the institution practice of critical theory, which I suggest you look up if you don't know what it is. Um, but in short, critical theory is, and I'm using my own definition, I'm not looking it up or anything, but it is the um, behavior of constantly looking at everything, social norms, activities, mindsets, values, and by default tearing them down because they are built on hand in hand with cultural Marxism, basically the oppression of people. Everything is oppression. If someone's successful, it's at the expense of someone else, and why? Because they're exploiting them. Because of that, everything that we hold in value, we need to look at, tear down, because it's all bad. That's critical theory and cultural Marxism in a nutshell. But the point is today, only in Western white majority countries is diversity and multiculturalism a real agenda. I've not seen or heard of anyone, any group, any movements in Saudi Arabia, Morocco, Colombia, Vietnam, Japan, or Bahrain, or any of those places talking about how they need diversity and multiculturalism. The irony of it is that in most of those places, ethnic and religious minorities are treated a lot worse than they are in the West. Why? Because there's no white people there. That's um, why you won't hear them talking about the fact that, oh, these countries need more multiculturalism, these places need more diversity, because no one cares, because it is slang for less white people. There's an assumption that if a group of white people are successful in a place and they are the majority, someone has to be suffering and oppressed. It seems to be thought that if there's a group of whites together in those same circumstances, that it's only because they hate minorities and dark-skinned people and exclude others. But in the UK, Canada, and the US, and a lot of these other places, non-white, non-native groups get together and even isolate, segregate themselves, don't learn the native language, and refuse to integrate, refuse to identify as the native population, and that is preserving their heritage. It's a strong thing. But if you're a white person that does it, then you're a racist bigot, and a white supremacist and a white nationalist. Um, because what about the native heritage? What about preserving that? What about preserving the native culture and holding the native values in high regard? That's racist and xenophobic, apparently. Hell, in Sweden, government officials are quoted as saying that Sweden has no national identity, which is super ironic because most of the people I would posit believe that into openness, tolerance, diversity, and multiculturalism are some of those values that make up their national identity. Diversity of thought is what matters, not diversity of color, origin, race, religion, any of that. The bottom line is that forcing diversity onto people doesn't create anything positive. It creates resentment, it creates anger, friction. The whole notion of equality in and of itself is a myth, and it's intellectually dishonest. No one is equal, no race is equal, no religion is equal, no country is equal. This is the largest, most often and egregiously perpetuated fallacy that we fail to combat and criticize every day. We just accept it. Equality of outcome Never going to happen. Not from person to person, not from street to street, from city to city, state to state, country to country, continent to continent. Um, there has not been a time in history where groups have been equal. But I'm not going to go into a big history lesson about that. But I now have an exercise for you, or a challenge for the next person who spouts off at the mouth about my diversity, my multiculturalism. Um, Either think about or task them to think about, when someone states that we need more of this race, more of this religion, more of this culture, more of this colored people, ask why. It's simple, but why? If that group is not there, what is going to be the catastrophic result? The answer is generally absolutely nothing. Again, the assumption is that the lack of diversity is racist and wrong. If you're white, or you're a strong person upholding your cultural values and norms, if you're doing it inside of a white culture. So again, why? Ask that all the time. Why? Why am I going to be better living next to someone who doesn't speak my language, doesn't engage in social or societal exchanges, in personal exchanges, doesn't hold my values in any kind of regard, or even resents my systemic beliefs? Why am I better living next to them? How am I better? That's creating, again, more friction, resentment, and animosity, arguably between both of us. Why, at the moment that that person of those values and beliefs and systems and color and nationality and religion, the moment they move next to me, I'm diverse. Yeah, I did it. I'm diverse. No. Ask yourself, why is it racist when whites congregate, but acceptable and applauded when not non-white, non-natives do that? Why stop there? Why not diversify Japan and Korea? Let's get more tall people there. Why not go to Somalia and bring the Asians, the short Asians from those places where we got the tall people, and bring them to Somalia and force them to adhere to those beliefs and learn those languages? We need more brunettes in Sweden. We could use, why not get more Germans in Colombia so they can embrace that language? It wouldn't be welcome, especially if those groups transferring as a minority to those majority countries expect the majority to adhere, accept, and cater to their belief systems and their languages and their cultural preferences. Diversity has become just a checkbox to fill and a political tool for identity politics and exploitation. Nothing more. We shovel a bunch of blacks into a white neighborhood, so now we're officially good and diverse. That's the mentality, and it's ridiculous. Multiculturalism is failing everywhere. It's exploding all over Europe, and the big hypocrisy, the big irony of it is we have these places where people are fleeing their culture to a culture we're not allowed to say is better or more open or just superior. We're not allowed to say that, even though they're fleeing to come to that culture for some reason. A lot of places, country-wise, a lot of nations need to wake up. Multi-ethnicism that you'll never hear is a good thing. It can be a good thing, and a lot more beneficial than multiculturalism. Ethnicity doesn't always go part and parcel with social norms and expectations. Culture, which is the social norms and value systems, that's where the clashes come. You can have a group of white people who are the same ethnicity fighting because of their culture and their value beliefs. But if their systems were the same, there would be little to no issue, even if they were probably a different color. Forcing anyone to accept someone's culture and never be critical or judgmental of those cultures, it's a social justice warrior term called cultural relativism. Cultural relativism, and it's a farce. So in short, cultural relativism is saying you shouldn't judge people. Yeah, they beat their woman, but that's their culture. Yeah, they throw their kids into a lake if the firstborn's a male, but we shouldn't judge them. Um, and you're looked at as condescending or judgmental or racist and xenophobic if you say no, no, our culture is better, our culture is superior, our values are more progressive and open and tolerant. That is judgmental and harsh if you're a social justice warrior and you're violating cultural relativism law. One thing to consider is in-group preference. It's so often confused and conflated today with racism and xenophobia and bigotry. And I think a lot of intellectual, smart people who know better do this on purpose to push their agenda forward. Um, in short, in-group preference is, I guess in layman's terms, preferring people that are the same. Now that can be color, it can be beliefs, it can be language. But for the most part, it's common sense because if you have people who, if you exclude color, because I would argue it's very, very irrelevant if you can have similarities everywhere else. If you speak the same language and think the same thing about the way women should be treated, and you think the same way about the government and think the same thing about freedom of speech, you'll probably bond whether you're black or white or Asian or mixed or brown. It won't matter. The clashes come from the different value systems and systemic beliefs. Um, where am I on my notes now? Give me one moment. Um, but in group, preferring those that are the same as you isn't the belief that those people who are different are inferior, stupid, should leave. It's very similar to food preference. You have your food preferences and you'll get your food preferences. That doesn't mean that you hate the food that you don't prefer. It doesn't mean because you like um, red meat that you think vegetables are awful and inferior. It's the same mentality that people have. If you have someone who's a different color from you, it speaks your language and holds your ideals and values and systemic beliefs and moral compasses, you're going to bond with them to a higher level than, again, the same people, the same color with those different things. I'm going to do a video soon on the ignorance of affluence in America. And but the way I view it is that America has become so great, so open and exceptional that people here feel the need to still find issues. Americans, especially this younger group, are ideologues and they want to fight for something. And instead of looking outward and doing things for people who could legitimately use help, we want to tear apart what we have, which goes back to critical theory. It's taught in practice, but not in name, which is question everything, tear it down. But the thing is, it's having us again critical theory. These people will view and look for social structures, social norms, social values, and social institutions, and attempt to dismantle and tear them down, regardless of the benefits of them. Regardless, there's no real reason behind it. It's just because. But the important thing is when they tear down these structures, what do you replace them with? Cultural Marxists? The answer is generally socialism. Critical theorists don't care. That's the problem. Diversity is nothing but a word. Stop with the attempts to at virtue signaling and changing things just for the sake of change. You shouldn't fight something just for the sake and principle of fighting it. That doesn't make any sense. You need to have a reason to do so and something to replace it with. I'm not saying that everything we've done as a society is great, but for the most part, they have been instituted and been practiced and looked at as norms for a reason. So just for the sake of tearing something down, you are ruining and breaking things, but they don't really care. So fight back, ask those questions. Why? Why am I better sitting next to a black person than a white person at school? Why am I better getting my tooth operated on by someone who's from Pakistan than someone who's from Ohio? Why? You just because you're not immersed in ethnicity does not mean you are racist or xenophobic. challenge that every step you get. Why? If you are, again, racism is a superiority thing for the most part. Even if you're living with black people around you, you could still be racist against all of those black people. You're not diverse. You're a racist living around people that you hate. So those are my thoughts. Let me know yours. Sorry I went on about 15 minutes with this. Please let me know your thoughts below. I appreciate it. If you got this far, let me know and let me know your thoughts. Go easy, gang.